Welcome to the Crown Casino, home of the 2007 Aussie Millions. What began nearly a week ago with a record 747 players is now down to the final three. Tonight, these three men fight for the Crystal Trophy at a first prize of $1.5 million. Gus Hansen is one of the game's greats, but a recent slump has shaken his confidence.
That's sick. That's sick. That's sick.
See if the Great Dane can reclaim his swagger tonight.
I've had a little bit of luck and played very well. I'm definitely going for the win.
Final tables are nothing new for Andrew Black, but the Irishman is yet to close the deal and is determined to avoid one of his infamous meltdowns.
You know, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to blow up. Should I give the fans what they want?
Jimmy Fricke appeared out of nowhere to dominate much of this tournament.
See, I'm exciting for the TV.
And now this unknown from Middle America sits on the brink of the unimaginable.
Financial stability is pretty nice, but I honestly would like the title more. And I want to be the best at something in my life.
The prelims are over. Tonight, one of these men will leave Australia with newfound riches and the title of Aussie Millions Champion. From the world-famous Crown Casino, FullTiltPoker.net presents the Aussie Millions. And we welcome you to the beautiful Crown Casino. We're in the heart of Melbourne, Australia. Our final table of the Aussie Millions continues. Barry Tompkins, along with noted poker author Michael Koenig, three players left vying for the top prize, and everybody chasing this guy.
Jimmy Fricke has nearly 3/4 of the chips in play, but Gus Hansen has the experience and the will to chase him down. Andrew Black, on the other hand, just hanging on. He narrowly avoided elimination. He's looking to double up early.
And it's getting expensive for him to play. Look at the blinds, 50,000 at 100,000 with a 10,000 chip ante, and he'll throw away that hand. Little pair for Gus Hansen.
The small blind, he could either call or raise. Hope to see a flop. He'll call.
And now Fricke with a 5-8 suited will check. Two players to the flop, Fricke and Hansen. Perfectly even hand, and here is the flop. 5-3-6.
Fricke has spiked middle pair. Hansen has an open-ended straight draw.
Hansen checks. Fricke will bet 150,000.
Hansen could check raise here. I don't see him going away, though. At least call.
And he does.
Hansen looking for a 2, 7, or 4.
Go to the turn. It is a queen of hearts. No help to either player. Fricke still big favorite.
Check.
Gus Hansen checks.
A second flush draw is now on board. Check. But Fricke's going to let the river get there for free.
And it's another queen.
Hansen can only win by betting Fricke off the hand. No, he checks. He's basically abdicating. Fricke is going to win. He has Hansen pipped.
5.
So Fricke is going to win this hand with that pair, and the rich just keeps on getting richer. If you're new to the game of Texas Hold'em, here's how you play. Each player is dealt 2 down cards. Then players decide whether to call, raise, or fold. If 2 or more players remain, the community cards are dealt. The first 3 are called a flop, and they're followed by a round of betting. Next comes the turn card, more betting, and finally, the river card. What makes it no limit is that a player can bet all his or her chips at any time. This is called an all-in. In this case, players show their cards, and in all cases, the best 5-card hand wins and takes the pot. Well, there's Gus Hansen taking notes. Maybe it's a surrender note.
Very serious consideration about those 5s.
Still thinking about the pair of 5s that Jimmy Fricke beat him with on the last hand. Hansen's going to toss away that 9-6. Now Fricke is 6-5.
And Barry, having so many chips allows Fricke to play virtually any 2 cards with impunity.
He'll raise to 350,000.
I'm all in.
And Black is all in. As the short stack, he's looking for a spot to get all his chips involved with an edge, and this could be the moment. Of course, Fricke has only a 6 high. It would be a really wild call. On the other hand, he only has to put in about 800,000 more to win about 1.5 million. That's about 2 to 1.
I call.
And he does make the call.
I'm behind a lot. Oh, I got two live ones.
Fricky seems to understand so long as black doesn't have an overpair, it's about the right price.
Count on cards.
And moreover, classic bully, he's picked on the guy that can't hurt him that much.
Here is the flop. What a huge flop. 10, 5, ace, each has caught a pair.
Fricky is still alive. He'll need a 6 or a 5, but black is in the driver's seat. Looks like he'll survive.
To the turn is a deuce of hearts.
One card to go. If black can avoid a 6 or a 5, he will double through with 2.3 million chips.
Looking skyward for help. Last card, it's a jack. Black will double through. So black manages to survive. He gets through the chip leader, Jimmy Fricky. What a hand.
Come on. Come on, Captain America. We love you.
Well, Andrew Black hoping to get even more love from the cards as he gets the early double up. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Aussie Millions. We started the final table with 7 survivors as Christy Gazes was the first to go, and Mark Karam quickly followed suit. Hans Martin Fogel finished 5th, followed by Julius Coleman. 3 men still remain, but only one will take home more than $1 million. So here's where we stand. Jimmy Fricky still a commanding lead.
But with his last big win, black is back, and Gus Hansen is 1 double up away from pulling even.
Well, Michael, a kid from rural Illinois, Jimmy Fricky, has been absolutely dominant since we got down to 3-handed play at our final table, and now the last question remains. Can he close the deal? What's going through this kid's mind?
I would assume, is this really happening? 5 full days of intense poker competition, 744 vanquished opponents, countless bad beats, countless good breaks, a ton of difficult decisions, and it all comes down to this. So far, Fricky has shown me that he's got what it takes to win, but Gus Hansen and Andrew Black, I promise you, are not going to make it easy. Let's see if Jimmy Fricky can make his dreams come true.
1.5 million Australian dollars at stake. That's about 1.2 million. Gus Hansen getting the kinks out. Jimmy Fricky, our front runner, with a 10-7. He'll throw it away. How about Captain America? Queen Jack. He'll make the call. And now Gus Hansen at 8-6.
He's in the big blind. He gets a discount.
But he's going to raise it up to 220,000. And a quick call from Andy Black. So Hansen and Black to the flop. 3-6-10 on the flop, and Hansen has caught a pair.
400.
Black going to bet it out 400,000.
This is a relatively inexpensive way for Andrew Black to find out where he's at with his 2 overcards. He can find out right now if Gus Hansen has any interest in this flop. Does he have a flush draw, a straight draw, or any pair?
How much more do you have?
I don't know.
How much more do you have is a bone-chilling phrase when you are the short stack and you are sitting with only queen high.
1.7.
So Gus Hansen now has a decision to make. What's going on in his mind right now?
He could merely call the 400,000 bet from Andrew Black, but that middle pair with a mediocre kicker might feel vulnerable. I think it's raise or fold for Gus Hansen.
I'm all in.
And he's going all in. And that's it. Andrew Black will just fold his tent right here.
That was a brave play by Gus Hansen, and it paid huge dividends.
Very good pot for Gus Hansen, one of the best players in the world. For Andy Black, however, he just gave back quite a lot of what he had just won on the previous hand.
Yeah, 600,000 chips for Jimmy Fricky is pocket change. For Andrew Black, that's a huge proportion of his stack.
Action starts this hand with Gus Hansen, a queen 5, which he will throw away. And Fricky, looking at an ace-queen, announces a raise to 350.
Uh-oh.
I'm all in.
Call. Andrew Black has picked a terrible time to make a stand. His king-queen is dominated by Fricky's ace-queen. Fricky, a 3-1 favorite to eliminate Andrew Black.
Tournament life on the line for Andy.
Come on. This is a good time to get lucky.
And he will need to get lucky. He got unlucky getting in the situation. It's unlikely to see 2 such big hands 3-handed.
Here's the flop, 3-7-7, no help to Andy Black.
Looking for a lonely king.
We come to the turn. It is a 9, no king there.
Andrew Black is down to 3 outs, or he will be eliminated in 3rd place.
This would be a really good time.
This is the only time left.
Captain America.
So for Andy Black, after 5 days, it's all come down to this. He needs one of the remaining 3 kings in the deck to stay alive in this tournament. He did not get it. Andrew Black is gone. Black will finish in 3rd place. He'll take home 700,000 Australian. That's about 560,000 US dollars. He played well. It was his best ever finish in a $10,000 buy-in event. Jimmy Fricke continues to put some distance between himself and the only remaining player. We'll see if Gus Hansen can overcome that big chip disparity. We're heads up in Melbourne as the young gun takes on the savvy pro for more than $1 million. We're coming back. We are in Melbourne, Australia, and after the elimination of Andrew Black, we are now down to heads up. Here were Black's thoughts on his performance.
I'm relatively happy with my play at the final table. I just went card dead when it went 3-handed, so yeah, I mean, maybe I could have done this and that different, but I'm pretty happy.
Jimmy Fricke with a huge chip lead, but not insurmountable. If Gus Hansen can double through right now, he'll be virtually even.
Yeah, and I think despite the chip disparity, it is an interesting matchup as we get down to heads-up play between Fricke and Hansen.
Man, I would love to do something crazy.
Gus Hansen, he probably intimidates me a lot less than Patrick Antonius. If he had made the final table, I probably would have played a little bit intimidated against him.
Jimmy Fricke, he's a young, aggressive player, but it seems like he knows what he's doing.
Eventually, I'm going to have to do some things with Gus, but all I need to do is try to get in his head and figure out what he's thinking. I mean, I just need to play my game and stay smart and all that.
He's young, he's aggressive, and that's definitely one of the things you need to do to win these poker tournaments. Be aggressive, put pressure on people.
I know it's incorrect to say, like, I know Gus Hansen's game from TV, but I mean, I know his general style of play. I know what I should do against people who play like that.
I can handle that. I don't mind too much. I believe in my own game, so I'm all right.
Jimmy Fricke claims to have cracked the Gus Hansen code. If that's true, we need to sign him up for the CIA pronto.
So we begin heads-up play. Jack 6 for Hansen. He will make a call.
Check.
Now Fricke, 8 deuce suited, will check. Incidentally, the blind's still 50 and 100, but there is no ante in heads-up play. We go to the flop. King deuce 10. Little pair for Fricke. He'll check.
Unusual because making any sort of pair heads up normally is worth a bet. Gus Hansen senses weakness and takes a stab at the pot.
100,000 to bet, and Fricke calls. To the turn, a 6, so Hansen is paired. Fricke checks.
Originally, Gus Hansen bet with nothing. Now he's made a pair. He's going to continue to fire.
200,000 to bet from Gus Hansen, and Fricke will lay it down. So Gus Hansen draws first blood in head-to-head competition with the youngster Jimmy Fricke.
It looks to me, Barry, that both these guys are interested in playing small ball poker to begin.
This is the friends and family area, and that's Eric and Tina Sorensen. They are the brother-in-law and sister of Gus Hansen, and you can see some of Jimmy Fricke's friends hanging out as well.
I wonder if they sense, as I do, that Jimmy Fricke's demeanor has changed just a little bit since it's gotten to heads-up play. Seems to be a little less comfortable.
Gus Hansen now with an ace little.
And although that kicker is negligible, any ace heads up is worth a raise.
And Gus will raise to 300,000.
300,000 total.
Fricke a king queen.
Another big hand heads up, but he's just calling. Earlier we saw him re-raise with hands like this.
Here is the flop. 7 ace king on the flop. Hansen is caught top pair.
Yeah, this could be disastrous for Jimmy Fricke. Fricke has made middle pair. He's connected. Gus Hansen has the boss hand and will continue to push the action. When Fricke checked, I think he's planning on check raising.
350,000 to bet from Gus Hansen into Fricke. And Fricke's got to be thinking, I'm in pretty good shape here. He will call.
And I believe Fricke thinks he is setting a trap.
To the turn, it's an 8 of clubs.
Check.
Check from Fricky. And now Gus Hansen. Hansen once again kind of mulling over how he wants to play this. He knows he's got a good hand.
All in.
And he's going all in.
And the fact that Fricky has not instantly called leads me to believe that perhaps he wasn't setting a trap. He was going to try to make some sort of play, but Gus has sort of taken the play away from him, and now he's confused.
$3,120,000 is what it will cost.
3.1.
And for Jimmy Fricky, I think it's pretty much an either-or kind of question. Either Gus has an ace or he doesn't. And based on that judgment, he will decide his next course of action.
I call.
And he calls. And that was an uncertain call, it strikes me.
Damn.
So Fricky leaping to his feet.
And Gus Hansen is in prime position to get right back in this tournament. Nearly a 9-1 favorite going to the river. Fricky is looking for a king or a queen.
Did not happen, and Gus Hansen is doubled up. And that's the Gus Hansen rooting section. They're loving it. And here's the guy with dismay on his face for maybe the first time in this tournament.
And Barry, if I'm not mistaken, we have a new chip leader.
And we'll see if young Jimmy Fricky can recover after allowing Gus to get right back in the match. Welcome back to the Crown Casino. Aside from playing in the main event, one of the special treats for this year's online qualifiers was an opportunity to compete against their favorite pros in the FullTiltPoker.net Bounty Tournament. In this exclusive tournament, many of the game's top pros had price tags on their heads. In other words, a bounty. And the online qualifiers had a chance to collect big bucks if they knocked out the big names. Here's how it works. Each pro has a starting value of $250. An additional $250 is added for each World Series of Poker bracelet and WPT title. For example, take the Professor of Poker, Howard Lederer. As a pro, his starting value is $250. His 2 World Series of Poker bracelets are worth another $500. And his 2 WPT titles, $500 more. So, any amateur that knocks off the Professor wins a cool $1,250.
How much am I worth? $50.
My bankroll's $0. My bounty might be worth more than me.
So, there was a lot of money floating around the room. But the man at the top of the list, Eric Seidel, worth a cool $2,000.
Yeah, I'm a mark man.
The play started off friendly.
Come on, buddy. Get a guy out.
Mike!
Keep it down.
Have you been told you're beautiful yet today?
No.
Allow me to be the first.
But things soon got serious as the eliminations began.
Where's Bunny?
My skills at poker player are non-existent.
Don't even talk to me, Mrs. Elizabeth.
The field dwindled as the amateurs stepped up their game, and Chris Vanina earned the ultimate prize.
I think he's a student, so that $2,000 will come in handy.
Not a bad morning.
The field soon fell away, and top pro Alan Cunningham found himself heads up with online qualifier Derek Snyder. But Derek's dreams were shattered when his top pair was outkicked by the top pro.
One of my goals as a poker person was to actually get heads up with Alan Cunningham anywhere.
And in the end, Alan Cunningham took home yet another title.
A $2,000 bounty is pretty sweet, but how about a $1.2 million bounty?
That's even better, and you can see what's happened here. Gus Hansen has assumed the chip lead. It is very close after it looked like Jimmy Fricky was going to run away and hide. King 5 for Fricky. And Fricky is counting out a raise and will raise to $300,000.
Heads up, the button acts first before the flop on the small blind and acts last after the flop. So you'll see a lot of raising from that position. But Gus Hansen has a good hand in the big blind, Queen 10 suited.
Hansen will call. So both players to the flop. Jack 8 Queen and top pair once again for Hansen.
Check.
He'll check.
This is prime check raising position. Hansen knows that Fricky normally is ultra aggressive. There's the bet.
400,000.
That's what Gus was looking for.
All in.
All in.
And again, he says all in. Now, what will Fricky do this time?
Toss.
That's what he'll do. And Gus Hansen adds to his chip stack. So Gus Hansen all of a sudden has turned all the momentum of this head-to-head play and has widened his chip lead in the process. Jimmy Fricky playing catch-up. Different game, isn't it, playing catch-up?
Absolutely. You know, when you're the bully, you're used to pounding down victims. And as we know, the best way to deal with a character like that is give him a nice slap in the chops.
Play continues here. King, queen suited for Hansen, and now cards starting to fall his way. 350,000 is the bet. And a king 9 for Fricky.
Heads up, that hand has got to look very big to Jimmy Fricky. He will certainly call, if not raise.
He calls.
Hansen has Fricky dominated. If a king were to come on the flop, this tournament could come to a quick conclusion.
And here is the flop. Jack 6 deuce on the flop.
Check.
Gus Hansen has 2 overcards and a monster flush draw. He's driving the bus.
450,000 is the bet from Hansen this time. And Fricky reaching for chips.
A lot of chips. Each of those stacks is 500,000.
He can get himself in a heap of trouble here.
He's making a play.
1.5 million.
I'm all in.
And Gus instantly all in.
And look at the facial expression of Jimmy Fricky. Almost one of resignation.
The head shake, he knows he picked a bad time to make a play, and he will have to fold. Gus wins a monster.
So Gus will take another huge pot, and Fricky, once again, bad timing. Gus will have the lead. He will also have all the momentum. As this event continues, it's head-to-head play for $1.5 million Australian, $1.2 million American dollars. We're coming back to Melbourne.
Speak to me, buddy. Give me something. Just a little something. There it is. I guess you paired that ace. Hard to let this go, but when you're beat, you're beat. We play at FullTiltPoker.com.
We welcome you back to the FullTiltPoker.net Aussie Millions. And we're at the Crown Casino site of the 2007 Aussie Millions. From your first steps inside the Crown, you'll be blown away by the opulent architecture of the Grand Lobby, awed by the sprawling atrium, and dazzled by the light and water shows. It's all found only at the Crown Towers. And again, a big thanks to our host at the Crown Towers. Gus Hansen sure enjoyed his stay, isn't he?
And why not? He's got nearly 2/3 of the chips. We're going to get to see Hansen playing from the lead rather than from behind.
Jimmy Fricky looking at a 4-3.
Call.
And he will call.
Another ace for Hansen.
It's all coming at the right time for Hansen. He's going to count out a raise to 250,000. And Fricky will call, but look at the body language of Fricky.
Yep. You're right, Barry. I see a lot of resignation there.
To the flop, 6-5-8 on the flop. Hansen catches a pair.
I think this could be big action. Fricky also has an up and down straight draw.
Hansen will bet 375,000.
I could see Fricky both calling or raising here. He's not going anywhere with that hand.
And it looks as though he is just going to call.
Previously, we saw Fricky do a lot of re-raising. It seems like now he's in calling mode.
And on the turn, it is a 10, and that is of no help to Fricky. Check from Gus Hansen.
That 10 of diamonds allows Fricky to represent a flush. I expect him to bet here.
Check.
And he checks.
No.
And it is a king of hearts on the river. And so now let's see how Gus Hansen plays this. He checks.
That's the right play. I think he just wants to show it down. He knows that the only hand that calls him is a hand that beats a pair of sixes. So now Fricky makes a play.
He does. 400,000.
400,000.
And in relation to the pot, that's a pretty small bet. I think Gus Hansen has just enough to call.
And he does. And Gus Hansen will win this hand. So Gus Hansen continues his dominance here. Once we've gotten to head-up play, it has been all Hansen.
And that face tells a huge story, Barry. The emotional temperature of this table has changed completely. Gus Hansen is perky and up and positive, and Jimmy Fricky seems to be melting into his seat.
And Gus Hansen now with a 6 million chip advantage, and as you see, the blinds have now risen to 60,000 and 120,000. No ante in head-to-head play.
Pair of queens for Gus Hansen.
Wow.
You know, heads up, he has gotten a lot of good cards, and he's gotten them paid off.
Hansen will count out a raise to 400,000.
And Fricky with a big hand.
Ace-9.
You would think he'd want to raise here. He's been getting pushed around heads up, waiting for an opportunity to push back. We know this would be a terrible time. Gus Hansen lurking with the pocket queens.
And he is just going to call.
And that's dancing between the raindrops.
So Gus Hansen, big favorite, go to the flop.
There's an ace. Fricky takes the lead.
And a check.
And man, when you've got a pair of queens, you don't want to see a king or an ace on the flop, but Hansen is going to bet
450,000.
All in.
And all in from Jimmy Fricky.
And now Gus Hansen with a decision to make. It'll cost him another $4 million to see Jimmy Fricky's cards.
Gus Hansen trying to figure out, is Fricky on a flush draw? Does he have an ace? Two pair? A bluff?
I'm going to try something different.
And something different to Gus Hansen is a fold.
And it was a great fold, Barry. When you're dealt queens, heads up, you feel almost invincible. But when a flop like that comes out, you have to have the discipline to get away from the hand. Gus Hansen loses the pot, but wins the battle with his emotions.
And let's see what that does for Fricky's confidence here in head-to-head play. Ooh, once again, cards being kind to Gus Hansen.
Watching him is like going to an art museum. Every time you turn around, there's more paint.
425,000 to Jimmy Fricky. And look at Fricky.
Uh-oh. I mean, this is another great hand, heads up. I'm surprised. It looks like Fricky just wants to call. Again, normally he would be reaching for raising chips.
So he does just call. And we will see a flop. Pair of tens and a jack on the flop.
Interesting flop for both players. Fricky checks his open-ended straight draw. Gus Hansen inside straight draw and two overcards.
Gus bets 500,000.
All in.
And immediately Fricky goes all in.
Another pressure-filled decision for Gus Hansen. But I think he can find a lot of reasons to fold here.
4.3, a little bit more.
4.3 million more for Gus to call.
This could be the worst ever.
Hansen talking to himself.
And he has to ask himself, would Fricky make that move with a 10? It's more likely he would make the move with a jack or some sort of draw, a big draw, like a flush draw or the straight draw that he has.
And listen to Hansen saying, you could have that, you could have that.
Meanwhile, Barry, Gus Hansen only has ace high. He knows that if Jimmy Fricky has any piece of that flop at all, or even a pocket pair, he, Hansen, is trailing badly. We know he's ahead.
Wow. It's really bad if you have that hand. It's really, really bad.
99% of poker players wouldn't even think of making this call, but Gus Hansen, former backgammon pro, crunching all the probabilities.
I call.
And he calls.
What a courageous call from Gus Hansen.
That was the hand I was hoping you had.
So we have ace king suited for Gus. And we have
Well, Jimmy Fricky is similarly impressed. It's exactly the way Gus Hansen anticipated this hand. He is now on the doorstep of being the Aussie Millions champion and taking advantage of the young upstart from Illinois. To the turn, it's another 10.
Going to the river, Jimmy Fricke has several cards for a split, but he's looking for a queen or a 9. Otherwise, Gus Hansen will be the Aussie Millions champion.
It is a 9!
It's not possible!
That's a card. That was a big one.
Gus Hansen has just suffered a tremendously horrible beat on the river. He's going to have to pick himself up, get back in the fight. On the other hand, Jimmy Fricke has an uncanny knack for getting all his chips in with the worst of it and somehow coming out on top.
It's a bad river. It's kind of a bad river for me.
Well, Gus Hansen read the hand right, played the hand right, but Jimmy Fricke's back in control. Back to the Aussie Millions, Gus Hansen and Jimmy Fricke battle heads up, but right now, let's expand our vocabulary, Aussie style.
Today on Down Under Dictionary, the word is poofteenth.
Poofteenth?
Poofteenth.
Well, now that's a term I haven't heard in a while.
People really say that, poofteenth?
I have no idea what that would mean.
Poofteenth is an exotic dish.
It's a slang word for somebody who doesn't know a thing about cricket.
I have no idea. 15th means a lot.
Poofteenth, noun, an extremely small quantity.
Oh.
Home and hosed.
Home and hosed. Oh my goodness.
I know what hosed means.
Home and hosed is,
I know that one. Home and hosed is a,
They're drunk at their house?
Sounds like you got home safe after getting drunk. Oh boy.
Home and hosed is like all showered up?
Home and hosed. Adjective, completed successfully and easily.
Oh, okay.
And right now, with more than 10 million chips, we can add another word to the Down Under Dictionary, to Fricke. Verb, improbably collect chips from the jaws of defeat.
And the past tense of that, of course, is frickied, and that's what has happened to Gus Hansen. Hansen in a position that very much like he was just a little while ago.
How demoralizing. You claw, you scratch, you get yourself on the precipice of victory, and then you're back down in the valley.
Queen 9 and Fricke going to call. Gus Hansen a King 10. And Hansen looks as though he's going to raise. And he does to 350,000. And Fricke going to call. Fricke in a power position once again.
Not only does he have the majority of chips, he is on the button. He'll act second.
Here's the flop. 6 King Jack. Hansen catches top pair.
Fricke an inside straight draw. Hansen won't let him see that fourth card for free. He bets.
450,000.
All in.
And Fricke moving all in.
Call.
Whoa!
Hansen, quick call.
I'm flabbergasted. I mean, I guess Fricke just thought Hansen had absolutely nothing. He could make him lay it down. Right now, Gus Hansen is in great position.
I guess a king would be good for me.
Slightly.
Fricke's hoping Hansen pairs his 10. That would complete Fricke's straight.
10 would make it exciting, though.
And here is the turn. It's none of those. A 5.
As long as Gus Hansen doesn't make 2 pair with kings and 10s, he is going to be the new chip leader.
To the river. It is a 6, and Gus Hansen has doubled up. Careless play from this man?
Very reckless. Jimmy Fricke handled those chips as though they were live hand grenades. He just didn't want to have anything to do with them. Here, Gus, have all your chips back.
Which is exactly what has happened as the chips go Gus Hansen's way, and Hansen now with a decided lead in chip count, as you can see, almost a complete reversal.
Yeah, and that hand, Barry, Fricke could have made some sort of reasonable raise. Hansen only opened for 450,000. Fricke could have made it 900,000 more or something, not 4 million.
But Gus Hansen will kindly accept the gift bestowed upon him by Jimmy Fricke. Looking at a pair of deuces, and he will call. Fricke at 10-5. He'll check.
Gus Hansen has now had 2 huge all-in confrontations, both times with the best of it.
Here's the flop, and whoa, what a flop for Fricke.
Trip 5s. And I like this betting out.
125,000.
It looks weak. Looks like he's just taking a stab at the pot. The last hand Gus gives him right now is a 5.
And Gus calls. It is a 9 on the turn.
I think Fricky should keep betting.
And he will. 400,000 to bet for Fricky. And Gus not going to get away from it. He's going to call.
Hansen's trusting his read. Jimmy Fricky has a customer.
So we come to the river. It is a 7 on the river.
Fricky determining the value bet amount that he can get Gus Hansen to pay off.
He is going to bet 1 million chips. Now, can Gus Hansen get away from this hand?
He has merely a pair of deuces, but all along he's believed in his read. And if he continues to believe in it, it's going to cost him a hefty portion of his stack.
He calls.
Trips.
Trips, says Fricky, and that is bad news for Gus Hansen. So Fricky will get a little something back. It has been a most entertaining heads-up battle for all the money here. Back and forth for the title, but remember, only one of these two will walk away with that crystal trophy and more than $1 million. Who'll it be? As the Aussie Millions continues.
In poker, it's good to have multiple personalities. I'm always mixing up my play to keep people guessing. Who will I be this hand? Trapping Gus, who check raises your chips away? Aggressive Gus, who plays every hand no matter what? How I play is up to you. We play at FullTiltPoker.com.
Aussie Millions, it has been a battle between Jimmy Fricky and Gus Hansen as Hansen doubled up early.
It's got to be very even right now.
But Fricky stayed alive, catching lightning on the river.
That was a big one.
Now we're one step closer to crowning the Aussie Millions champion. And as you can see right now, a pretty healthy lead for Gus Hansen over Jimmy Fricky, almost a 2-to-1 edge in chip count.
The good news for Fricky, however, with blinds at 60 and 120, he doesn't need to panic.
Hansen looking at a Jack 10, and he will call. Fricky Queen 6, he'll check. So a free flop for Jimmy Fricky. And on the flop, King Deuce Queen.
Intriguing flop. Fricky makes middle pair. Gus Hansen up and down straight draw.
Fricky is checked. Now Gus Hansen going to bet 120,000.
Pretty small bet. Obviously, Fricky's not going to fold. He might want to raise.
He calls. And we go to the turn. It is a 9 of diamonds.
That's the straight for Hansen.
And Fricky first to act. 300,000 into the teeth of Gus Hansen.
Unless Gus Hansen fears a flush draw, smooth calling here would look pretty good. Yep.
Merely calls with 300,000.
The trap is set.
And now the river is an ace.
Wow, gets even better for Gus Hansen. He now has the nut Broadway straight, the nut hand. And just as Fricky had to determine last hand how much he could extract, Gus Hansen will have to come up with a similar number.
And Hansen hardly hesitates. That's 1.1 million chips.
This would be a really tough call for Jimmy Fricky. And he does call, and he is going to lose a big pot.
Hansen shows the cards.
That's pretty good.
And Jimmy Fricky will go deeper into the hole against the veteran Hansen.
For a guy who claims to have Gus Hansen all figured out, Jimmy Fricky strikes me as rather confused at the moment.
And Gus Hansen's chip count has just risen. Almost the exact reverse of when we started head-to-head play.
At this point in the proceedings, I think Jimmy Fricky thought he would be celebrating a victory with his buddies.
And he's looking at a 9-7 suited now, and he will call. Oh dear.
Man. Gus Hansen, sometimes when it's going right, it is going right.
And what better time for it to go right than now? And Hansen raises to $350,000.
And Jimmy Fricke probably can't imagine this nice-looking suited connector hand is such a big underdog.
And Fricke will call.
Gus Hansen swallows hard and hopes his opponent gets a little piece.
Queen 8-6.
And that flop could be just enough to get Jimmy Fricke in trouble. He has picked up an open-ended straight draw. Gus Hansen leads out with the aces.
All in.
Fricke moves all in.
Call.
Instant call from Gus.
Flop top pair again.
It's better than that. With 2 cards to come, Gus Hansen is about a 2-to-1 favorite to win it all.
Six.
Hansen has seen Fricke pull rabbits out of hats. Will the spell be broken?
Jimmy Fricke has been the Cinderella story of this event, and now will his carriage turn to a pumpkin? It's a deuce of clubs.
That's a sweat.
Wow, well, that's a good card for Fricke. He now has a flush draw as well. Any club, a 5 or a 10. Otherwise, Gus Hansen is the champion.
It's been more than 2.5 years since this man has won a major championship. He is now 1 card away. To the river. And that's it. Gus Hansen is the 2007 Aussie Millions champion.
I'm afraid I have good hands.
Yeah, I could tell.
Gus Hansen wins $1.5 million Australian, 1.2 US for Jimmy Fricke. Biggest payday of his young career, $1 million Australian, and a memory to last a lifetime.
Once we got down to 3-hand, I just started destroying Andy and Gus, and I never had a hand and never made anything. I just felt like, it was mine to win. Then once we got heads up, things just started crumbling. He started flopping top pair. I started making some bad moves, and basically just never made a hand, and that was that.
So here's the way the money breaks down at our final table, and Michael, it has been quite a tournament.
For most of this wild ride, Jimmy Fricke had this field bamboozled, but in the end, Gus Hansen showed the upstart how to get it done.
In the beginning, I felt like, hey, I can gamble here. He's definitely the big favorite. And a couple of hands later, suddenly I had the big chip lead, and then we got a big pot, and it turned around again. So I just tried to stay calm and focus and play as good as I could. And in the end, the cards were my friend.
A record-setting field of 747 gathered in Melbourne to make history, and it was a roller coaster ride from the beginning.
Yeah! Yeah! Yeah!
A hometown hero gave his fans something to cheer about. Yeah! But his dreams fell short, along with 2 other top pros.
I think that's it.
Andrew Black never blew up and nearly broke through.
Should I give the fans what they want?
As the heads-up battle between Jimmy Fricke and Gus Hansen became one for the ages. But in the end, the Great Dane found victory lane once again, and now has 1.5 million reasons to celebrate his Aussie Millions championship. For Michael